Hey, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and I appear to have some headset issues, so we'll just get those rectified in just a moment. And a good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I do apologise for the audio issues there, but what a start to the stream. It wouldn't be one of my streams without a small little hitch before we begin. But we are underway, of course, for qualifying here at Albert Park for round 6 of the Halfords Formula Alpha Championship for 2023. And we're on board with Paul Millman at the moment. He is heading around. He's heading into Sector 3 and is currently 5th in this session with a 134.0 being his best lap. That was his previous lap as well. You may notice some small changes to the graphics. They were initially intentional, and we'll get into that in a little bit of time. Hopefully explain why that is, but it's probably for a good reason, actually. It allows me, I'll be able to talk a little bit more about what's going on track, because I have been getting some experience here at Albert Park, and it has been very enjoyable at that as well. As we are going to go on board with our current we're going to try and go on board with our current session leader, Will Inglis. Can't go on board with him at the moment. We're going to go on board with Alex Smith out there to try and topple Will Inglis from the top spot there. Only, I was about to say only 1/10 of a second separating them. That is incorrect, though. I can tell you it's about 9/10 of a second separating them. Will Inglis has some very impressive pace indeed here at Albert Park. And how do I know that, you ask? As we see Alex Smith go a little bit wide. Well, just a few days ago, I was very lucky enough to take part in the Sunday Fun Race. Of course, we run the Sunday Fun Race, if you weren't aware already, which is a chance for us to experiment a little bit with a server, experiment with some mods maybe, and have a bit of racing in a more casual environment than what we usually have on the Wednesdays. And I was very happy to be taking part in that, actually, last Sunday. It was me, Will Inglis, Guy Swarbrick here at Albert Park in these RSS Supreme cars. Absolutely fantastic vehicles, and it was in changeable conditions as well. Although it didn't go far, it didn't go too well for me. I once again apologise, Guy, for taking you out on lap 1. I do apologise for that one. But Will Inglis, throughout that entire race, just had untouchable pace, to be honest. He had issues to start off with. He had some technical issues, so we could see those reappear actually here at Albert Park, and that could be the only way to stop him, I think, in this session. He had technical issues with his steering wheel. He lost his force feedback, so had no kind of no reference really for what the front end of the car was doing at all through his steering wheel, and someone like Alex Smith probably brushes that off, because Alex Smith, of course, being the madman that he is, I believe still is running the controller, is using a controller to navigate Albert Park here as he navigates on the grass here at Albert Park. But yeah, so he lost force feedback, had to quit out as a result of that, and then was able to rejoin and overtake both. Was able to overtake me, wasn't quite able to catch up with Guy in the end, but very impressive pace from Will Inglis in that session then. We've got 7 minutes to go here in qualifying. Rob Whitney is currently one of the few drivers in the pits at the moment. In fact, the only car in the pits at this point in time, so he's getting ready for that final last run stint here at Albert Park. Who else is out at the moment? Well, of course, we have Alex Smith, who we're on board with here. He is looking to best a 1:31.1. Currently in the 1:32s over his previous runs. Let's see how we can improve from there. Now, what to watch out for here at Albert Park. the tyre wear could potentially be a little bit worse than expected. At the same time, tyre temperature, kind of struggling to get heat into the tyres, could potentially be an issue here as well. As we look back to the chaotic Formula 1 Grand Prix that we enjoyed last Sunday. That was certainly a sight to behold, and one of the, I think, biggest contributing factors to the chaos of that event was quite simply the tyre warms, how the tyres were behaving on track, so drivers will have to be careful of that one. Another thing to be cautious of is the sun here at Alfa Park. It can be a thing to watch out for based on people's SOL settings. Of course, SOL, the graphics mod that we run, the sun could potentially be beaming down. We didn't have that in our wet race, so it'll be interesting to see if we get that in the sun. But with it being a very flat circuit as well, you could potentially maybe be struggling with a bit of reflections for some drivers. And we have the time starting to tumble down for a couple of races now. Paul Millman is on for a good lap here. His best lap, 1 minute 34.0. I can't give you what his predicted is because unfortunately we don't have that for this evening because obviously having to do all that running, I had to take all my commentary mods off and the predicted time didn't want to play ball. So let me know as we see Paul Millman heading around this final corner out the run down to the start-finish line left to negotiate. It's a 1 minute 34.02 beat. It's 1 minute 33.2. That is a really nice lap from Paul Millman. A good improvement, 0.8 of a second. Let's see if we can carry that momentum now into the rest, into the final stages rather of this qualifying session. But yes, do let me know if you prefer the previous graphics that we were running on last week's touring car round or one fortnight ago, the Jeddah round, or if you prefer what we've got here, which is the more traditional layout, going back to graphics of old. I think it's a little bit occupies a little bit less screen space, but gives you just that little bit less information. As we go on board then with Barry Clayton. Barry Clayton currently at 1 minute 31.2. P3 in this session, running nicely as Alan Matthews has had an issue. Got to go on board with him briefly. He is able to carry on, so that is A-OK there. But he's got a 1 minute 31.2 to beat. He doesn't beat it on that previous lap, unfortunately. A little bit down on the timing. Still got 4 minutes to go though, so should have plenty of time. He's going to need to as well. I was going to say either have a cool down lap and get that car ready once again, but he's going to have to dive into the pits after that one because the tyres will be pretty much finished with that incident. On board then with Alex Smith, still that 1 minute 31.0, his finest effort from this session so far. 4 minutes to go, ladies and gentlemen. Qualifying can make a big difference here at this circuit. Often not the easiest track to overtake at, of course. It's a little bit narrow, obviously. It's got a sort of street nature to it, and you can get an additional effect of dirtier off the back end of the car. Obviously not too much downforce to worry about in comparison to the likes of a say pre-Grand Effect era Formula 1 car, but still overtaking. You've got to pick your moments here. Not like me on lap 1 against Guy Sorlbreck on Sunday, which was, I wasn't necessarily trying an overtake. I was just caught out by the fact that he braked where he needed to brake, and I just completely misjudged and was in the wrong position entirely. And we'll stay on board with Alex Smith, and you can watch here where I catapulted. It was at this stage right here where I catapulted Guy Sorlbreck into the gravel. I obviously let him through after that one. That was very much my bad. But I think what caught me out in that as well, as we see Alex Smith does improve through that second sector. One of the things that caught me out, and this one's something obviously that I am not accustomed to at all, but these drivers obviously getting better and better at each session already, very good indeed, is just how different these cars behave when they've got a full tank of fuel on board. It really was quite a shocking difference to me. Obviously, I'd gone straight from qualifying, and then you've got 5 minutes to kind of refocus and drive a completely different car, obviously with 70 litres of fuel on board. That is the magic number thereabouts. In fact, no, that is for a 45-minute race. We're probably looking at about 40 litres of fuel, which is a little bit more palatable for the drivers, I am sure, but still a hefty tank of fuel on board the car to deal with. And it was, unfortunately, for Alex Smith, a loss through the last sector there to 1 minute 31.6 on that previous lap then. Unfortunately, not quite able to touch the times getting close to the likes of Willingliss. Willingliss still his fastest at 1 minute 30.2. In fact, no one at this late stage in the qualifying session actually setting their fastest laps. Obviously, you'd expect the track to rubber in just that little bit more, but it gets to a point where the track's already optimal here. So we don't really have too much to play with in terms of track condition. Very hot tarmac here, of course. Sat in the bacon Australian sun all day. Apologies, my scouse came out there and I said bacon instead of baking. I meant baking, not as in the food stuff. On board then with Jack Hodson he was on for a good lap there. Unfortunately, he has some front wing damage he suffered there, but still it did improve in the end, actually, in that previous stint. A 1 minute 32.2, season 4th fastest in this session. Paul Millman was, of course, once sat with 4th fastest. He's now back down in a P6, still waiting to make more strides in this session. He had some great momentum on him. Let's see if he can do that. Final push now here in qualifying. Going to go on board with Guy Swarbrick. He's personal best through the first sector, losing out through the middle lane, so potentially running a little bit more downforce, which I think was his style over the Sunday fun race. Will Inglis, much like myself, opting for pretty much no rear wing at all and absolutely flying down those straights as we watch Guy Swarbrick now negotiating the final couple of corners. This braking zone can really catch you out here, and you have to try and carry as much momentum as possible through it, of course, because this is the run onto the start-finish straight where you may think about deploying the push-to-pass system. You may choose to wait until Sector 2 to do that as Guy Swarbrick comes across the line here. Is it an improvement? It is not. No, it is, in fact. It's a 1 minute 34.3 for Guy Swarbrick then. Doesn't move up, but solidifies his position even more. He is, at this point in time, the only AM runner, so will, no matter what he does, unless it goes disastrously long, come away with some decent points here at Albert Park. We have a couple of drivers actually diving into the pits. Will Inglis is not one of them. We haven't seen Will Inglis in anger just yet, so let's go on board with him as we go personal best through Sector 1 at 29.0, 22.5 through the middle sector. A very competitive time, but not his outright best so far. A 1 minute 30.2 to beat, of course, and we only have about 3 corners left to go inside Will Inglis's car here. Head into that penultimate corner then, just very calm and composed here as we have one last corner to go. The back end potentially can step out here. It doesn't look like it's going to happen here as we get back onto the loud pedal and come across the line in just a moment's time with Will Inglis. Can he improve his pole position even more? He can, with a blistering final sector there. It's a 1 minute 30.098. So just as the drivers behind are starting to get maybe 8/10 of a second within his best, it now makes it 1 second. It's a 1 minute 30.0, nearly into the 29 for Will Inglis, and that surely is his pole position for the taking. We're on board with Alex Smith here. This is his... well, I don't actually know where we are in terms of his run here. We might have a bit of a timing glitch going on. Let's see if it resets as we head through the second sector. This could still be an outlap for Alex Smith, in which case this brings an end to his qualifying charge. Who else is out there? Remember, Jack Hodson. Jack Hodson has lost out through his first sector and his second sector, as has Alan Matthews, and Alex Smith does as well. So it's looking more and more like it's going to be Will Inglis sat here on pole position at Albert Park for round 6 of the Halfords Formula Alpha Championship. Only a couple of corners to go for the remaining runners now, as Alex Smith heading into that penultimate corner in that Blue Spark liveried car, and he dives into the pits. So yes, that is an end to the qualifying running for Alex Smith. Who else is left on track? Only Jack Hodson and Will Inglis to go. Will Inglis losing out on this lap, not needing to do much more, and Jack Hodson abandoning the lap as well with a bit of an issue. Losing out for that second sector by a couple of seconds, and losing out through the first as well. It is Will Inglis who will take the qualifying trophy here at Albert Park. He takes pole position, ready for race 1 coming up in just a few minutes' time, so don't go anywhere. On the grid then here at Albert Park, just over 30 seconds to go. It is Will Inglis and Alex Smith who round out that front row of the grid. Barry Clayton, Jack Hodson, Alan Matthews, Paul Millman, Andrew Brammer, Guy Swarbrick and Rob Whitney rounds out the field here. For a brief moment, it looked like my car wanted to spawn on the track, and I actually run a little mod that tells my car to automatically go into the pits, so nothing happens and I don't interfere with the race when I'm in the session. For a brief moment I thought after Sunday's antics that had gone wrong, but it appears that hasn't been the case, and we are ready to go. Lights out here at Albert Park in just a few seconds. It is 6 red lights on the gantry, and the race is underway as we are away now, and it is already with Alex Smith on the push-to-pass system, trying to get that launch done as quickly as possible, trying to get rid of that launch phase as quickly as he can. Into that first corner then is miles ahead of Will Inglis. What a fantastic getaway for his nearest rival here. Going to be near enough side by side as we head down towards the third corner now. It is Alex Smith rolling past the inside line. Will Inglis potentially doing a little bit of a switchback, but well defended by Alex Smith as we head over to that sausage curb. Will Inglis does not want to get caught out by that, and he rides over it, of course. Don't want to skate over it. You will lose all control and potentially spin out. Alex Smith then extending his lead after Will Inglis had to go the long way around, now potentially falling into the jaws of Barry Clayton, but Barry Clayton having his own issues. He's now side by side with Alan Matthews. Alan Matthews up into third. Fantastic start for him. Meanwhile, Paul Millen, after all this battling, is still very much in the mix here, as I believe there's been an issue for Guy Swarbrick. Looks like he's had a collision and has dropped down through the order as we go back on board with the front runners. Then it is Barry Clayton, Alan Matthews very much embroiled in a battle at the moment. Flames on the overrun as we head through the fast left-right chicane here and head down into Sector 3 now. For a brief moment it looked like Will Inglis back within 1 second of Alex Smith, but Alex Smith, what a getaway for him. That couldn't have gone much better if he tried here. What I suspect he did was he tried to get into a high enough gear as quickly as possible. These, of course, are quite grippy slip tyres, but with a lot of power underneath them, they will still slip. Will Inglis saving his push to pass for the start-finish straight, then trying to close up the gap. It's very powerful here at Albert Park, so expect to see it used on plenty of occasions in terms of trying to get some overtaking moves completed. But yes, Alex Smith with that getaway, then I suspect dropping into second as quickly as possible, getting the rear end to grip up and away on the push-to-pass system. Just gave him a massive speed advantage in comparison to everyone else. In fact, in terms of the top speed trap, he's still the quickest car on circuit. Has he gone for a bold strategy? And we'll talk about we'll talk more about that in just a brief moment's time. But we're on board with Barry Clayton, only half a second separating him and Alan Matthews as we head into this second lap of the race now. And Barry Clayton, for a brief moment, I was worried about him. I thought, is that little bit of understeer heading into the first lap? Is that going to be a sign of things to come in this race? Is the setup just not quite there? Is he not quite having the feedback that he wants from a fuel-laden car? But that doesn't seem to be the issue now. He's very much back on the pace with Alan Matthews. And speaking of back on the pace, it's Will Inglis. Only 0.2 of a second now between him and Alex Smith. But it's all gone wrong for Will Inglis. The commentator's curse in full effect there. He's off at the exit of the chicane, at the back end getting away from him, and potential race lead comes to a very, very swift end. That is Jack Hodson going off as well. Potential sympathy spin there. He's going to tumble all the way down to the back end of the running there. That is a disaster of a way to start the race for him. But Will Inglis, and he's off again. What happened here? Well, of course, now his tyres are going to be smouldering hot. They are going to be like lava over this hot surface. They've been spinning around. And now he's asked him to get back up onto the tarmac and get on with it. So he's now going to have to spend the next couple of laps just bringing that car back into a comfortable window before he can even think about trying to close up that gap to the top end of the field. Now, in terms of delta to Alex Smith here, it's only about 14 seconds. It looked obviously dramatic and looked like it's all over. It wasn't that bad in the end, only 15 seconds. That is disastrous, of course, when you're fighting for the lead, as Andrew Brammer, who we haven't seen too much of actually in this session so far, finds his way up into P4. It is, of course, disastrous when you're fighting for the lead, but Will Inglis now potentially just got to get his head down if he can bring those tyres back into a comfortable window, and if he can put lap times in with a amount, I suspect, a fairly decent amount of damage. If he can do that, he's still in with a shout here. Will it be for the race lead? I'm not so sure, but that is a complete disaster for a man who has just been on impeccable form here at Albert Park throughout qualifying, throughout practice, throughout Sunday's running as well. Of course, it's a different beast running this track in the dry in comparison to the wet. But Willing List currently running in P6. Jack Hodson as well, a few seconds down on the next car in the pack here. And that car next in the pack is Guy Swarbrick, only a few tenths down on Rob Whitney. Guy had some decent pace here at Albert Park, and he'll be doing his best to try and close up to Rob Whitney. Now, of course, different classes. We don't really advise that they race. It won't change the points scoring at all, and of course I know Guy will let Rob Whitney get on with his own race, but he is of course entitled to make his own to make his own space on the track if need be. So let's see now as we watch Guy Swarbrick head around that final corner. Will he get the overtake done? Yes, he will. He'll use that push to pass system. That should make things just a little bit easier. Oh, what a watch out there, getting very close indeed. That will be some interesting paddock politics if things went wrong there, and things have gone wrong for Guy Swarbrick, and there is in fact contact between the two, as there is a rejoining Guy Swarbrick getting back on the track at turn 2, and I don't think Rob Whitney was quite expecting that, and now there's been a major collision between him and Guy Swarbrick and Rob Whitney. Commiserations there, back on the track now, a 10-second gap between him and P8 and P7 there. Is anyone getting a bit of a recall to the Alpines here at Albert Park? I certainly am. There's a little bit of deja vu if ever I've seen it, but that is a shame. A bit of a racing incident there. I don't think anything could have been done from where Guy is sitting in the cockpit. He's got his mirrors, of course, and there was definitely, as we could see from the cameras, a clear bit of track for him to occupy. It was just down to closing speeds, that really. Not too much could have been done. Very definite racing incident, I think. As we go back on board with our race leader, then haven't seen him in a good few minutes, but it is Alex Smith leading this race by about 3 seconds. And already we have demonstrated that the commentator's curse very strong here at Albert Park. But I'm going to go out. I'm going to go out and put my neck on the line here and say this is looking like some of this is the more confident Alex Smith that we've seen every now and again. This is some of the best Alex Smith form that I've seen in a good while here. He's in good control of this race. Alan Matthews is posting very competitive lap times, but Alex Smith has an answer for every single one. It is Alan Matthews actually who currently holds the race lap record for this race, at 133.3, and Alex Smith a little bit slower on that previous lap, but the gap's still very much manageable, and he's just posted a purple sector 1 at 29.4 through that first part of the lap. Let's see what he does now as we get through to the high speed section of the circuit. Or one off. It's actually quite a high speed street circuit here at Albert Park, and it is. I know it doesn't often provide the most thrilling overtaking action, but to drive, it's a very lovely circuit indeed, especially that left-right chicane, as demonstrated by Alex Smith. The bravery required to head around that in a Formula car at full chat is really quite immense. I wasn't able to do it competitively at all in my running in these cars here, but it is a lovely technical circuit to drive, and you've got some beautiful scenery to surround you as well. And by the looks of things, off the most recent Formula 1 race, a fantastic crowd as well, which certainly helps. We don't quite have those numbers, but we've got a fantastic crowd of people who are taking part, and a couple of you watching as well. So hello to everyone, every single one of you who is watching at home. Now on board with Alan Matthews, and it is a purple through Sector 3. So these two are racing. It doesn't look like they're racing. It looks like they're about 4 seconds down or 4 seconds apart. That's because they are, but they are racing in the sense they are just trading sectors here and there, and they are keeping each other on each other's toes. And it will be very interesting to see how this battle forms up. But do not count out a bit of a dark horse in this race. Barry Clayton, he was very much pertinent at the start of the race. We haven't heard anything from him for a couple of laps, but here he is, Barry Clayton. Hasn't been set in the purple sectors, but has been stringing together a couple of very nice laps quietly in the background. He's now only about a second down on Alan Matthews here, closing up in on him. And I said it's Alan Matthews and Alex Smith who are really battling it out at this point in time. No, it's not anymore. It's now Barry Clayton and Alan Matthews as we head into the later part of this lap. Let's see what they can do. Barry Clayton has the advantage of the slipstream, but these high-speed corners like the chicane there has to watch out. He does, because obviously he'll have a bit of dirty air to negotiate. He doesn't want to get carried away, rather. He could find himself potentially overdriving the car a little bit for the grip conditions. So he'll have to watch out for that one. He is very much got the work cut out for him here to try and find a way past Alan Matthews. Alan Matthews has some great pace at the moment. And we're back on to the start-finish straight once again. Only 6 tenths of a second separating these two cars now. Barry Clayton posting a blistering lap there. No purple sectors, not like Alan Matthews and Alex Smith, but in terms of an all-round car, Barry Clayton's is looking, I'd say, pretty perfect. Whatever you've done to your setup there, Barry Clayton, that has worked. It is, of course, an open setup championship. Drivers are free to chop and change their setup as they please. As we now see Barry Clayton right all over the rear wing of Alan Matthews now. And I would say Barry Clayton's car is looking very composed given the circumstances. We've got a decent amount of fuel on board. The tyres have kind of fell out of the ultra grippy window and have now started to fall into that point where they got a little bit warm. They've lost their edge. It will come back at some point, but it's not yet. And he's still got a decent amount of fuel on board. And he's now 3 tenths off the rear wing of Alan Matthews. And he's looking very composed indeed. He's middling in terms of straight line speed. He's not got the outright speed of the likes of Alan Matthews here. 286 kilometres an hour through the speed trap for Alan. But he's not quite as slow as everyone else. I'd say a good setup all around on Barry Clayton's car. That is a bold place to deploy the push-to-pass system. Because it's not like DRS, of course, where DRS, as soon as you start turning or braking, well, more braking than turning, really, it will shut off the system to restore full grip. Push to pass is quite simply just a mapping change to make the car have more power. And that can provide some unintended consequences if you're mid-corner, especially at a high-load section of the circuit, like the chicane there. Of course, if you're exiting quite a tight corner, it can be quite easy to just kind of put a bit of opposite lock in and catch the car once again. But if you're heading for a high-speed section like that, you can soon find the back edge getting away from you, and there's little that you can do about it. So very brave of Barry Clayton to be doing that. Meanwhile, Alex Smith, this battling going on behind, is making his race lead just look that little bit more comfortable now as we get closer and closer to the halfway stage. 7.5 seconds. That has pretty much doubled in the past couple of laps. So Alex Smith, rather, very thankful for Barry Clayton's presence in this race, I presume, at this point in time. And we've seen this a couple of times now. We're on board with Andrew Brammer. He just quietly starts putting in these really good races. We don't see too much from him. But he just seems to be able to knuckle down. Doesn't have any cars kind of near him. He must be quite bored, lonely out there. He's got a few seconds to the car behind, who is going to be hunting him down at a rate of knots, it must be said. That is Will Inglis, the car behind. But isn't quite there with the guys battling out in front. And as a result, he's consistently having these quiet races, but bringing home the really good points. He's certainly in play in the championship standings. We'll have a look at those in just a moment. But a great race, once again, for Andrew Brammer at this point in time. Let's see what he can do now, as he's been hunted down by Will Inglis, and Alan Matthews is being hunted down by Barry Clayton as we go back on board with them now heading down towards the final corner, of course, and back onto the start-finish straight. It's looking like these two have been able to kind of pick up the pace, maybe work together a little bit and close that gap to Alex Smith. Or has Alex Smith had a bit of an issue on the previous lap? That does not look to be... No, it is the case. Alex Smith has had a big off at the second corner there, and his race lead that was looking oh so comfortable, he now finds himself in P3, which makes the battle between Alan Matthews and Barry Clayton just that more interesting. It's no longer just a battle between those two, it's now a three-way battle for the lead. Alex Smith back up into P2, but of course, their battle, which was for the second spot on the podium, is now the battle for P1. Alex Smith, what happened in that car? That is such a shame. And now we see Barry Clayton hunting him down. Of course, I suspect his tyre temperatures are going to be through the roof after that one. The grip, he'll have carried a load of dirt onto track, onto the rubber on his tyres. The grip just won't be quite there for him, and he'll have a knock to the confidence as well. This is allowing Alan Matthews potentially to break away. Just one lap ago I said about how Alex Smith will be so thankful for Barry Clayton's presence in this race. Now we'll be asking him, could you please just back off a little bit? He wants this race lead back, of course, but will that happen at this point in time? I don't know, because Alan Matthews has been going toe-to-toe with him in terms of lap pace. This is a disaster for Alex Smith. What a shame. The commentator's curse for the second time this evening in full effect. As we see Barry Clayton hunting him down now into the penultimate corner. Runs wide, actually, potentially outbraking himself. He does. He's off, and that is so easy to do at that corner. This corner is deceptive in just how heavy that braking zone is and how much it kind of entices you in, and before I know it, spits you off. that has brought an end to the threat of Barry Clayton for now for Alex Smith. So the situation betters in his sense. It's a disaster for Barry Clayton. What a shame to see. He was at one point fighting for the race lead. Could still be in just a moment's time. You never know. But Alex Smith can knuckle down once again and focus on getting this job done. We're past the halfway stage. We're not quite well past it just yet. We are past the halfway stage in this race. And Alex Smith finds himself now in P2. That comfortable 8-second lead disappearing in the blink of an eye. Here at Albert Park. Runs a little bit wide there as he tries to keep up with Alan Matthews, but now Alan Matthews seems to be the one in control of this race. Meanwhile, Jack Hudson and Paul Millman trading positions here. I'm not quite sure what has happened. Both drivers here actually suffering damage. I believe there has been contact between the two. There has. Very minor at that, though. But I'm not quite sure what's gone on with Paul Millman's race. He seems to have good pace at the very start, but just hasn't, unfortunately for him, been able to carry it later on into the race. Willingless has been able to get past, and Jack Hudson, of course, who we saw spinning off, has been able to now as well. Guy Strawbrick running in P8, and what a shame for Rob Whitney, of course. Race really not going his way for matters really out of his control. It could be argued that racing incident very unfortunate for him. As we go back on board with Alex Smith, 0.3 of a second separating him and Alan Matthews as we head around that final corner, and gap actually extends. A little bit of oversteer creeps in for Alex Smith. I mentioned that could happen. Was that purely mechanical? Was that natural oversteer, or was that to do with he did get on the push to pass system quite early there? An early deployment of the push to pass system gave him the race lead. Could that one corner there, the deployment of that push to pass system, have cost him it now? It could be argued he might have been able to get the overtake done heading into turn 1. He's going to have to wait for another opportunity later into this lap, or at the end potentially for his next shout at an attack for P1. Meanwhile, Barry Clayton, he was 5 seconds behind, now finds himself 3 seconds behind. 3.5 if you're being pedantic, but that's because it was a purple Sector 3 and a personal best in Sector 1 as well. He's back on the pace then. A little bit worried for his form in this race, but it seems to have recovered, which is great to see. We should see, as I do my best Sean Connery impression apparently, we should see Barry in the mix once again. So then we see, unfortunately for Alex Smith, that overtaking opportunity doesn't come to fruition on this lap. He's closing up once again though as we start the next lap, but we saw him drop back in terms of pace there. Wants to be careful to not fall into the threat of Barry Clayton once again. But I will say, so far this season, we are at the halfway stage by the end of this race. We'll be at the halfway stage. Can you quite believe that? I can't. It's absolutely flown by. But this season in particular has been blockbuster P1 battles after blockbuster P1 battles. I can't think, and the touring cars as well. I can't think of a season where we've had so many race-altering battles, and it has been very enjoyable to watch indeed. Of course, those race-altering battles alter something else, and that is the championship that we're going to have a look at in just a moment while we're watching Alex Smith and Alan Matthews head through that high-speed chicane then. Both doing a very good job to look after the car, look after the tyres at this point in time. Hopefully no more incidents for any of the drivers involved in the battling here. But it is, of course... Oh dear! Commentator's curse! Once again, I should stop talking, really. On the exit of that corner there, Alex Smith, our race leader, the back end got away from him. He went onto the grass there, I presume. Didn't quite catch it. It happened so quickly. Alan Matthews into the pits. His race coming to a complete end. I don't know what to make of that one. That is such a shame. Alex Smith very happy, of course. That puts him into P1. Barry Clayton, rather, P2. Andrew Brammer, talking about him having a good, quite comfortable race. He'll be rewarded for it. He's in P3 at the moment, and that is looking quite comfortable indeed, because Will Inglis hasn't really caught up at the rate that I thought he would. But what a shame for Alan Matthews, doing a good job in the front end of this race, in the front end of this field. And that one small incident brought it all to an end. That is... I can't believe Albert Park has been so far, by the scenes of things, it's not been a friend to the drivers, shall we say. It's been really quite testing by the looks of things. As we're on board then with our new race leader, of course. If you've just tuned out, or if you tuned out for a little bit and you've just tuned back in, you made to about 10 minutes ago, 10, 15 minutes ago, okay, then nothing's changed. Let me tell you, that is not the case. Alex Smith then, back in the lead of this race. Barry Clayton in P2 then, 7/10 off. This is now the battle for the lead between Barry Clayton and Alex Smith. A little bit further down is Andrew Brammer in a comfortable podium scoring position. Will Inglis hunting him down though to take that away from him. Runs a little bit wide actually, he uses the push to pass system on the exit of the chicane. I have the sword of Damocles here, it appears, because I can control the race at whim. As soon as I go on board with the car or make comments about them, I ruin their race. Andrew Brammer is very thankful for me for that one, of course, because that now quells any kind of pressure that Will Inglis was about to put on Andrew Brammer on the upcoming laps. And now Andrew Brammer looking very comfortable in P3 at this point in time. Jack Hodson had a decent recovery in the end from being plumb last in this race, finds himself now in P5. 10 seconds down is Paul Milburn. Geiss Robrick hunting him down. And then Rob Whitney no longer in last in this race, but still not having a race to remember, really, unfortunately, for him. As we see then Barry Clayton now only 0.4 of a second down on Alex Smith, our race leader, and has some lap traffic to negotiate. This could get interesting, of course. Lap traffic in this series has no major obligation to get out of the way. It's just out of courtesy that we let the drivers who are faster carry on with their race, but you shouldn't have to compromise your race in order to do that. And well negotiated by all three drivers involved there. Congratulations to all you, really. That was very well played to be doing it after chicane as well. And that was hats off to all of you there. That didn't really end up having any effect or adding any drama at all to the race. Barry Clayton just about as close as he was to Alex Smith prior to that. And I think everyone went ahead and round of applause all round, really, for that one. Very well executed for such a difficult overtaking circuit. As we get back onto the start-finish straight, then it looks to be that Alex Smith had a little bit of issues getting the power down, using that push-to-pass system to try and break away. He was slower on the previous lap, and Barry Clayton has a look up the inside. I apologise if my mic is starting to sound just a little bit iffy. We'll get that resolved for race 2, but this is absolutely nail-biting now, ladies and gentlemen. The battle is very much on at this late stage in the race. It is, of course, Will Inglis, currently P4 in this race, who is our championship leader, 201 points to his name. Alex Smith then really wants this race win. He's P2 with 124 points to his name. Wants to break away from Alan Matthews, who of course will score pretty much nil point in this race, with 123 in P3 in the championship. As we see, Jack Hodson now gets past Will Inglis. I'm not sure what is the cause of that. It's because he hasn't. But then Paul Brady, unfortunately not here this evening, P4. Paul Milman, P5, as we see Barry Clayton going for a bit of a switchback, getting a great run down towards the end of Sector 2 here, up towards the chicane. He's going to actually get a nose out in front. Will the inside line be the better line to take? I don't think it will. I think that outside line can carry more speed, but you have the inside for the second time around. Well held by both drivers there to be too wide through the chicane, and of course it's now Barry Clayton too far back to really do anything of any dramatic effect. And then we get towards the end of the lap here, with now Barry Clayton leading. The second half of that lap then could be, oh dear, Barry Clayton was leading this race, gets some catastrophic oversteer, and now finds himself down in P2 once again. He's off at the penultimate corner, for the second time this evening, catching a driver out. Who is that there? That is Rob Whitney trying to unlap himself there for a second. I thought that could be Andrew Brammer. It was not. Fear not Barry Clayton, but still throwing away the race in just one corner, and once again with about a 6-second gap, it's Alex Smith who leads. Now, again, if 20 minutes ago this would have looked perfectly normal. Alex Smith has led a quiet race. I can tell you he has not. That delta might be the same, but it has been an absolute roller coaster to get there. Surely this is the last time the position or the driver who holds P1 that change. Surely that can't change once again. 6.5 seconds now down to Barry Clayton. Barry Clayton, I'm sure, kicking himself in his sim rig at home. Andrew Brammer looking comfortable here in P3. Should be getting a good amount of points for that podium, which will help him in his championship charge. He's currently P8 in the championship, closing in on Jack Hodson in P7. Barry Clayton, good amount of points for him as well, currently running in P6. And then we have Guy Strawberry, of course, our only AM runner, will take away plenty of points and extend his championship lead. But with 20 seconds to go on the clock, Barry Clayton is hunting down Alex Smith. But will it be enough to close up? I think the only way we can be sure is if there's going to be an incident, which do not rule out in this race, especially when I start talking about drivers having issues. Alex Smith is being oh so careful through those corners now, and I do not blame him in the slightest. He's got a 5-second gap, so he can afford to miss out on the odd 10th here or there at this stage in the race. He doesn't need to push it far too hard. He doesn't need to try and overdo it. He just needs to get that car home and take the race victory, which on multiple occasions has looked like he will not take away. Of course, how did he get in this position in the first place? He got a great getaway off the line, using that push-to-pass system, gripping up the rear end and breaking away from Willingliss. Willingliss having a tough race in the end, will come home with P4. I'm sure he feels, and he does, deserve more. Barry Clayton, after a strong resurgence throughout this session, will settle for P2. I'm sure if you asked him at the start, he would have been very happy with P2 indeed. However, now it must be a very difficult P2 to accept. And potentially, let's not forget our biggest, most unfortunate member here. It is Alan Matthews down in P9. He will exit the pits to take, I imagine, just take away, just to get classification. I'm not quite sure why he's exiting the pits at this stage, but what a disaster for him as well, of course, at one point in the lead of this race. We've had 4 different leaders at one point, or briefly at one point or another in this race. And it looks to be that it's going to be Alex Smith, who should come home with the race lead. He has two corners to negotiate now as we head through that front corner where Barry Clayton's hopes and dreams were completely unravelled. Alex Smith now heading around that final corner with the back end of his car has tried to catch out on a number of occasions, but he weaves across the line in celebration to take the race 1 victory. Congratulations, Alex Smith. A well-deserved race win. You certainly fought hard for it. You made it difficult for yourself. As Barry Clayton, commiserating to Barry, but still good points on the board. A P2, must be happy with that one, although maybe through gritted teeth. As we wait then, have a little wait for Andrew Brammer. Andrew Brammer rounding that last corner then, just having a very quiet and well-executed race here. Great racecraft on display, and that is why he has come home in P3 to round out the podium. Good points on the board as well. Congratulations, Andrew. Rob, when he comes home, classified P8, and here we have, in just a moment's time, I believe that is, who is that there? That is Willingliss here, heading round the penultimate corner. Our pole position man, at one point leading as well, had great pace, but unfortunately it just wasn't quite on display here in race 1. I suspect damage from that early incident caught him out big time, and that is why Willingliss comes home P4. Still some points on the board, but not as near as many as he would like, I'm sure. Our championship leader losing out some of his advantage then. As Jack Hodson, good recovery drive for him in the end to come home P5. And take some points on the board for that as well. Paul Millman and Guy Strawberry will be battling to the line here, of course. Different classes, rather, if I can get my words out correctly. But good to see these two still enjoying a good battle towards the end of the race. So it is Paul Millman who will come home P6. Guy Strawberry comes home P7 on the road, but takes the AM race victory, of course, being the only runner in the AM division. And that rounds out race 1's running. Well, that was certainly a roller coaster. Misfortunes for some, fortunes for others. And if that is anything to go by, race 2 will be just as exciting. The reverse grid race, of course, coming up in just a few moments' time. So catch us after the break for that one. Don't go anywhere. And welcome back to the action here, ladies and gentlemen. On the grid then at Albert Park for round 2, or race 2 rather, of round 6 of the Halfords Formula Alpha Championship. And we are on the grid here for the reverse grid action. What a race. Race 1 was. We have just over 30 seconds to go until lights out. Now it is Rob Whitney lining up here on P2 we're on board with at the moment. He's rounding out the front row with Alan Matthews in P1. Then we have Guy Swarbrick, Paul Millman in the second row, Jack Hodson, Will Inglis, third row, Andrew Brammer, Barry Clayton and Alex Smith rounds out the running. So this could be an interesting one. The fastest guys from race 1 at the back of the running then. And this gives a couple of drivers potentially a time to shine, because look, there is Alan Matthews. That is why as we have 600 lights on the gantry. I've just had a sudden realisation, but it is a good getaway for Rob Whitney here. We're on board with him at the moment as he absolutely blasts away using that push-to-pass system, heading into the first corner, as does Paul Millman. There's contact further down the running. I believe that was Alex Smith. No, it wasn't. It was Alex Smith, Jack Hodson, Alan Matthews, Paul Millman, all involved in collisions there, but it is Rob Whitney who breaks away, heading down into turn 3 with a 2-second advantage on the cars behind. What a fantastic start to the race for him. Guy Swarbrick up into P2, then Jack Hodson P3, Will Inglis P4, Alex Smith P5, Andrew Brammer P6, Barry Clayton P7, and what happened to Alan Matthews there? I'm not quite sure. We didn't quite catch it. We're on board with Rob Whitney while it happened, but what a disaster for him, tumbling down the order once again. Here in race 2, Rob Whitney, 1.3 seconds between him and Guy Swarbrick. Then Guy Swarbrick, he'll be hoping, can be used as a bit of a buffer zone. Guy Swarbrick was not Rob Whitney's best friend in race 1. I think now here in race 2 he will be. How the tables have turned. I nearly said how the turns have tabled then. As we head through the high-speed chicane, and Will Inglis up into P3. That is because, no, he's not. He's off. He is off big time, as is Jack Hodson. He was able to carry on then. Where his hopes were dashed in race 1, Will Inglis is off in race 2 once again. Back down into P8. That has promoted Barry Clayton up into P4 now, but he's having incidents of his own. This race has started in very chaotic fashion indeed. Alan Matthews, will we get race restarts here? Will we get about 12 race restarts? And let's see. We've certainly got precedent for that now. As we have a bit of a train of cars then heading through that final corner. Once again, it is Barry Clayton leading that train, and then Alan Matthews from behind, Jack Hodson in P6 and Andrew Brammer P7. But Guy Swarbrick, meanwhile, at the front end of the field, doing his utmost to catch up to Rob Whitney, and doing a very good job of it as well. That previous lap, a 1 minute 43.3 for Rob Whitney, and a 1 minute 43.5 for Guy Swarbrick. And when you consider that was lap 1, and they were on very different, and they were obviously very much embroiled in getting the race underway, and very much enjoying some battling as well. That is impressive indeed from both drivers, especially for Guy Swarbrick, I think, when he's had all that battling to do. But now we're seeing him look around the outside of Rob Whitney. Alex Smith has, in all of this, done a very impeccable job here of getting through the field. Now side by side with Guy Swarbrick. Guy Swarbrick can no longer focus on what is going on between him and Rob Whitney. Instead, Alex Smith gets up into P2, Guy Swarbrick down in P3 then. Alex Smith very much gunning for this race lead now. In terms of his pace on the previous lap, of course, he was quite far down the order because he started further down the field. So now we'll start to get a more representative look at lap times at the very start of this race. Guy Swarbrick in P3, Barry Clayton in P4. That is Jack Hodson off here on the run down towards the third sector. What a shame for Jack Hodson then. It's going to be him and Will Inglis battling it out as we head into the final couple of corners on track. And in fact, it's going to be Will Inglis up into P8 then. But Will Inglis not getting this race started in the manner that he would have wished for. In fact, the few drivers really not gone their way. Certainly gone Alex Smith's way. There certainly has gone Rob Whitney's way. Rob Whitney, I'm sure, delighted that he is currently in this position, battling with Alex Smith for the race lead. But just look at the pace advantage in Alex Smith's favour there. It's a 1:35.835 on that previous lap for Alex Smith. Only 4/10 separating him and Rob Whitney then. As we head into the middle part of the lap, heading through into turn 4 in just a moment. I've got to watch out for that big sausage curb, of course. That can really catch you out. There is Guy Swarbrick still in the mix here, of course. Alex Smith has been slowed down a little bit. One of Rob Whitney's, I'd argue, one of his best strengths and what we've seen in all the racing he's participated in so far is his defence. He can really put up a very strong defence indeed. He is demonstrating that now as he keeps Alex Smith, which at one point his car had a 2-second pace advantage to Rob Whitney. He's able to keep him at bay. Can he keep him at bay for that little bit longer, or late on the brakes around the outside? Can Alex Smith get the move done? No, he can't. Rob Whitney then shutting the door once again, slamming it shut as well, as it's still Rob Whitney who leads the race. Alex Smith P2, Guy Swarbrick P3. These three have very much broken away from the rest of the field, and it's kind of their own race to control really now. As I believe Will English, Jack Hudson have made contact. Yes, they have, still further down the order. Meanwhile, Alex Smith does eventually get ahead of Rob Whitney. Impressive effort, though, from Rob Whitney to keep Alex Smith at bay for as long as he did. Now he's got to very much forget that ever happened. He's got to refocus his mind on just setting those consistent and strong lap times now. He can't let any kind of loss of confidence from being overtaken get the better of him and potentially lose out to Guy Swarbrick or Alan Matthews behind. He's now just got to settle in and try and keep those cars behind him. Guy Swarbrick, though, of course, leading the AM charge, who's the only AM runner, but this is an... Oh dear, this could get... Oh dear, yeah. That was... I don't think that that move was necessarily on there. I'm not quite sure what happened. I don't think there was enough room for Guy Swarbrick's car, but also we saw Rob Whitney potentially just trying to defend the move there, which he's entitled to do. But either way, Rob Whitney now in P3, was in P4 for a brief time, is some damage on his car to contend with, although not too bad. He now finds himself in P4 behind Alan Matthews. Guy Swarbrick now is in P2. And there's only 4.5 seconds between him and Alex Smith. 2 seconds now between him and Alan Matthews. And that was... Oh dear, there's more contact going on now. This time it's Rob Whitney tagging Alan Matthews. Of course, these cars can be quite tricky to position sometimes. You've got very wide rear tyres on them. And unfortunately for Alan Matthews, it's another race that comes to a very bitter end indeed. Will he continue on? I don't think he is. No, I think he's bringing an end to his running, which is a great shame to see. It was a strong strategy call. Of course, what he did in race 1, he dived into the pits and chose to come last, because that would give him the prime position for race 2. And look at how that has gone. What a shame. As we go on board with Rob Whitney now, very much under pressure from Paul Millman and Andrew Brammer. Andrew Brammer is probably, if race 1 was anything to go by, all you've got to do is just settle into a good, consistent, comfortable rhythm. And in fact, he's made contact. Never mind. Commentator's curse here is it's a thing. I am very sorry to all drivers involved that I have even bothered to show up. I'm just ruining your race evening through talking about it. I am so sorry. This has given Guy Swarbrick just a little bit more of a comfortable margin to the cars behind, as we now see Rob Whitney back in P3 after all of that. So what happened there then? It was Andrew Brammer and Barry Clayton ending up having a bit of a coming together, and it wasn't Andrew. Andrew Brammer had a bit of an incident at the penultimate corner there, ended up coming together. I was going to say all Andrew needed to do was wait and let the other guys in front battle. And if race 1 was anything to go by, he'll find himself in a really good point-scoring position. That hasn't quite worked out the way he would have wanted now. He's still in P6, which is certainly nothing to stick your nose up at. However, not where he'd want to be. Meanwhile, it is Guy Swarbrick now in a P7. Good to see Alan Matthews actually back in the session now. And Rob Whitney in P3, potentially being hunted down by Paul Newman here. Paul has demonstrated some great pace so far this weekend. Try that again. Paul's demonstrated great pace. The purple and blue car on your screen has been going very quick in the racing so far. There we go. Dumbed it down a bit. I can get those words out. But it is Paul Milner hunting down Rob Whitney at the moment, very much so, under pressure from Barry Clayton, in fact, who was able to swoop past a small issue there. Sees Paul running on to the off the circuit rather, and oh no, big lockup for Barry Clayton. That is now Paul Milner back into P4. In terms of current pace on that previous lap, Paul Milner 143.6, Rob Whitney 143.8. So he was closing in. That was a bit of a scruffy lap for Paul Millman though, so that's probably not the case on that previous lap. Using that push to pass system though to close up to Rob Whitney. In fact, it was the case. It was Rob Whitney had his own issues on that previous lap. And now it's going to be a battle between Paul Millman and Rob Whitney. Paul closing in as we head down towards turn 3, looking at the outside. That gap very much closed. Meanwhile, in all of this, Guy Swarbrick comfortably now 8 seconds ahead, of course, and runner in P2. Very strong showing from Guy Swarbrick. 2 tenths now separating Rob Whitney and Paul Millman, and then only a few tenths down to Barry Clayton. As we see Barry Clayton on his recovery drive to try and catch up to the likes of Alex Smith, the man who is battling for quite a few laps in race 1. He'll be hoping to battle once again, and that could be the case, especially if I choose to go on board. Should I do it? Vote in the comments. Do I go on board with Alex Smith and ruin his race for him? Now, side by side, Barry Clayton and Paul Millman. Barry Clayton getting the move done eventually on Paul Millman as we run into the braking zone for the... Well, it's not really a braking zone, it's more of a bravery zone for the chicane there. And we see Barry Clayton up into P4, hoping to get past Rob Whitney now. Meanwhile, Alex Smith, a commanding 10-second lead at this stage in the race. We'll look at him in just a moment. But Paul now potentially under threat from Andrew Brammer. Andrew Brammer hoping to charge his way back up through the running, of course. Right earlier on, things not going his way. Barry Clayton having a little bit of oversteer there. That certainly not as dramatic as what we saw a few laps ago, but certainly a little bit better. As we see now, Rob Whitney using that push-to-pass system to try and keep Barry Clayton at bay. Heading into that first corner then, who will come out on top on this lap? Rob Whitney, once again, has to demonstrate his defensive skills. He's certainly got some strong defending here at Albert Park in particular to keep Alex Smith at bay. When you compare, Alex Smith is a driver who was running in the 132s. That's very impressive indeed. Now, I'm not sure what happened in Willing Gliss's race here. Of course, we know he had a few incidents. He's now a minute down off the lead of the race, which is not ideal. But I can tell you he's certainly got race-leading pace. It's a shame to see that he has effectively been neutralised in this race. Because 1 minute 32.0, that matches him to... In fact, it doesn't match him. He absolutely destroys Alex Smith in terms of pace in this race, but to the tune of about 8 tenths. In fact, no, make that 1.6 seconds quicker than Alex Smith's previous lap there. That is Willing Gliss in anger mode. That is him absolutely flying along, doing his best to try and catch up to the rest of the pack in the remaining half of this race. Let's see what he can do though. Barry Clayton heading through at the moment, then he's got past Paul Millman, now only has Rob Whitney to negotiate. Rob Whitney, the defensive maestro here, as we head into the final part of the lap now, has the outside late on, doesn't even need to go late on the brakes. Barry Clayton getting a great run into that corner, and it is Barry Clayton now up into P3. Podium scoring position then for Barry Clayton. Will it stick though? We've seen plenty of races become undone in the second half so far this weekend. That could happen again, and that looks like it has happened. The commentator's curse, oh so strong here. I should just really should. I mean, I either need to stop talking about it or get a little tally on OBS. I'm gonna do that. If we have a bad commentator's curse race, I'm going to do that. Meanwhile, Paul Millman and Alan Matthews obviously a lap down and involved in an incident as well. Andrew Brammer, Paul Millman and Alan Matthews all off the track there. What a shame for their races. They've both been able to recover quite nicely. Indeed, Alan Matthews hasn't, but should be underway now. In fact, no, he is not. Ditched in the gravel there, but Paul Millman and Andrew Brammer, what a shame. They were very much in the mix here. Now find themselves P5 and P6. Rob Whitney, meanwhile, down in P4. Barry Clayton does get past in the end, of course, but looking a little bit more comfortable once again now here, Rob Whitney. We're at the halfway stage of this race, and he is currently running in P4. Nothing to shy away from, of course. He'd be very much preferring the race lead at the moment, and at the start he certainly looked like he could hold that at one point. But we're on board once again now with Alex Smith. Alex Smith, who we haven't looked at in a little while, and I'm very much apprehensive to, given how things have transpired this weekend. I am very apologetic if things go awry now, Alex Smith. But leading a very comfortable race. That 8-second gap that he enjoyed in race 1 before it all became undone, and eventually he would gain back towards the end, he has doubled that now. It's now 16 seconds. He looks, as I said, in race 1, more control of a race than he ever has before. Could that go awry here? I think with 16 seconds now, things are looking ever more in his favour as time goes by. He is utterly controlling this race. Willing Gliss has posted that blistering 1 minute 31.4, which the likes of which we haven't seen. There's a small off for Alex Smith there. Does post a purple sector 1 through that first sector though. Is currently in the low 132s, so is second to only Willing Gliss in terms of pace at this point in time. Barry Clayton trying to hunt him down, but probably doesn't have enough race time to do it. Just needs to keep the nose cleans now for the second half of this race. Doesn't have to worry too much about the cars behind, just needs to get the car home safely, and he is in for a race win here at Albert Park. Will Inglis, meanwhile, is, owing to the issues that the cars in front have had, closing in on Andrew Bremer and Paul Millman, of course. As we have Alex Smith taking a very exuberant line there into Sector 3. We'll pretend we didn't see that one, as that was definitely all 4 wheels off the tarmac and very much on the grass, in fact, as we have 10 minutes to go in this session. And it is Alex Smith who leads this race. Meanwhile, Rob Whitney, Paul Millman enjoying a battle here as we head into Sector 3. Rob Whitney on the push-to-pass, arguably the most optimal point on the lap to deploy the push-to-pass here at Albert Park as we head through the left-right chicane, and the brake disc glowing red-hot, so Rob Whitney actually having to dive on the brakes a little bit there into that chicane. Could that be tyre grip? Could that be aero setup? Who knows? Either way, he's lost momentum as a result, and there on the inside is Paul Millman, and Rob Whitney potentially not quite expecting the car to be halfway alongside there. It was pretty much halfway alongside. In this, Andrew Bremer scoots his way through, both drivers trying to get underway as quickly as possible. It's now Andrew Bremer up into P4. Remember what I said? It was quite comfortable races and he'll score well. Here we are. Andrew Bremer back in P4. Things going his way once again. Rob Whitney in P5. He's lost a position in that, but things could be worse, all things considered. Only 10 seconds, though, to Will Inglis. Will Inglis still setting those purple sectors, still doing his best to hunt the drivers ahead down, and doing a very good job of it as well. So Alex Smith, his lead looks more and more comfortable by the second, but certainly drivers in the mid-pack not quite as comfortable. Now, let's look at how comfortable the championship standings are looking after race 1. Alex Smith does close up to Will Inglis in the championship. Will Inglis, a 1 minute 30.7. That is a competitive qualifying time if ever I have seen one. But let's see if we can get into that 1:29 threatening zone by the end of this race once again. We see him now closing up to Paul Millman as well. Will Inglis is losing out in terms of points to Alex Smith. This could be a crucial weekend for Alex Smith in terms of his championship charge. Only 60 points separating them when it was near enough, makes no difference, 90 just a few rounds ago. That closes up now to about 60. It will close once again 150 points then to Alex Smith at this point in time, 213 to Will Inglis. Alan Matthews, P3, 127. He will not score from this weekend, allowing the likes of Barry Clayton to potentially overtake or get nearer. Damn it, after this weekend, Barry Clayton in P5, 114 points to his name as we go back on board with Rob Whitney. Then we have Paul Millman, 113 points in P6. He will remain in P6. Jack Hodson now a lap down, unfortunately for him. He's in P7 at 88 points. Andrew Bremer, P8, 78 points. So Andrew Bremer will be making good innings on catching up to Jack Hodson in the championship. And then we have Rob Whitney in P9. Guy Swarbrick extending his lead in the AM Championship here at Albert Park once again. Being hunted down. Apologies if you very briefly heard double reeve there, that should have disappeared now. But we now have 8 seconds left. 8 seconds? No, 8 minutes. I'm glad it's not only 8 seconds. It's been a very interesting race indeed on the timer. And it is Rob Whitney against Paul Millman. Just in the background there is Will Inglis as well. This could get very interesting indeed. Guy Swarbrick now losing position to Barry Clayton. Guy, in all of this, let's not forget, a very impressive run to be P2 for so long. Drops back to P3. Still very impressive indeed, though. As we see, Will Inglis will be trying to find his way past these guys to try and salvage some points. These are, of course, point-scoring positions. Has a look up the inside. Paul Millman giving him the room there. And Rob Whitney late on the brakes. Too late on the brakes, in fact. And that is 2 positions in 2 corners for Will Inglis. Up into P5 then for Will Inglis. Paul Millman, though, hunting him down, though, trying to close up that gap. Both on the push-to-pass system. I thought that was all 3 for a second, but looking a little bit more composed. Will Inglis through the left-right chicane, looking a little bit more comfortable and extends his gap to the cars behind and should be breaking away given his current lap pace. Meanwhile, Paul Millman seems to have somewhat dispatched of Rob Whitney. Rob Whitney, his race becoming rather undone here. What a shame. Was at one point leading, now P7. And then back on board with Guy Swarbrick and Barry Clayton. Change for position once again. It is Barry Clayton back up into P2, however. As we see, he should be, hopefully, for his sake, trying to break away from Guy Swarbrick now in the remaining 5 minutes and just try and secure that P2 a little bit more. So of course, if he does so, and Alex Smith does have a fairly major incident later on into the race, he's in prime position to benefit from that. But this is also really great to see from Guy Swarbrick. He was chatting when we were doing the Sunday fun racing. You know, it's not, he's saying about how it's not often that he takes away race wins, it's not often that he takes away podiums, that sort of things. But through just pure and simple good form and great racecraft, and here at Albert Park, he will be coming away with a thoroughly deserved and podium here. And make no ifs or buts, he is an AM runner, but he's very much in the mix with the pro runners here. It must be said, you can't argue with what you're seeing on screen in front of you. He is very much in the mix with the pro field here at Albert Park, which is fantastic to see. And a solid P3 on the cards at this point in time. 15 minutes to go. Only 5 minutes to go. I'm all over the place with the timings apparently here this evening. And it's 14 seconds, well 16 seconds in fact, between him and Andrew Brammer. And it's looking quite comfortable indeed for Guy Swarbrick. Just as it is for Alex Smith. That gap now, but it's down to P2, extending to half a minute. 30 seconds, or 29 seconds, ladies and gentlemen, as we get ready to start the next lap. Very nearly gets it wrong, goes onto the grass there. Doesn't. We'll lose time to Barry Clayton as a result of that, but still can afford to do that a couple more times, as long as it's no big spins or no big offs. He should be able to bring this car home quite safely. Will Inglis now in a bit of a race of his own, of course. Let's go and have a look at him. Oh, dear. We've got to watch out for that type of thing. On board with Alex Smith, the back end getting away from him out of the first corner. And I can tell you after that, he now has no front or rear wing to speak of, really. He's pretty much lost his aero. His tyres won't be thanking him either. They'll now be old and warm and low on grip. So Alex Smith doesn't want to let too many more errors like that creep in. He's got that gap that was 28 seconds. It's still 28 seconds. He was able to carry a decent amount of pace in that incident, which is good to see. But Alex Smith has to be very cautious now that he doesn't replicate that anymore. I should mention the speeds here in race 2, much more substantial than in race 1. 290 kilometers an hour this time round through the speed traps, which is impressive to say the least. And that gap now between him and Barry Clayton now at 25 seconds, 24 seconds. That gap tumbling down. If we compare the best laps, Barry Clayton has a much better best lap than Alex Smith. A 1 minute 31.8 in comparison to Alex Smith's best efforts of a 1 minute 32.2. So 4 tenths in it, but 4 tenths could make plenty of difference if there is an incident on board with Alex Smith here in the remaining few minutes in this session. That last lap then, a 134 in comparison to Alex Smith's 133.7, but we'll see a much more different story as we head across the line once again for Alex Smith here. So that was innocuous in one sense, that incident that we had as it gets on the push-to-pass system to start the next lap. That incident that we saw here at this point on the track was innocuous in one way. You know, it was harmless. You know, no one around to, well, apart from me, no one around to see it even. But if that's a tale of anything that could be creeping in, that is not what we want. A 1 minute 39 on that last lap for Alex Smith. A 1 minute 34 for Barry Clayton. So he's gained about 5 seconds on the previous lap, has Barry Clayton. Alex Smith cannot afford now to drop this race lead. Of course, he already took the race 1 victory, good amount of points from there. That was a bit of a roller coaster. He made it a little bit harder for himself, or it was made a little bit harder for him in race 1. Could we see the same thing again in race 2? He's already not been completely smooth sailing now, but will the same thing happen again? Will Inglis, meanwhile, busy setting low 130s here lapping around Albert Park. 130.4 as he starts the next lap. Purple through that final sector. We're on board with him, of course, when he set his best lap in qualifying in the end. And his Sector 3 was... I've never seen a Sector 3 like it in terms of running these cars. He just looked so hooked together. Doesn't look hooked together as he rides over the sausage curb there. It is really quite damning to be on stream this evening, apparently. As soon as I cut to you on camera, something bad happens. And I do apologise there, as Will Inglis running wide as well. Of course, he's got a bit of dirt and pickups from running onto the marbles on the outside of the circuit there. And, yeah, it's not great. I apparently wield this insane ability to to ruin people's races. I don't like it. I want to go on board and have a look at how every single driver is doing. Is that the most equitable way to do it, actually? In the remaining 1 minute of this session, so I'll just have a quick rundown and go on board with every single driver, just to make sure that if I do hold this magical, mysterious power, that everyone gets a fair dosage of it. So we'll go on board then with Alex Smith. Alex Smith, of course, having an incident just a lap or two ago, now stands to about 20 seconds between him and Barry Clayton. At this phase in the race, Barry Clayton is the faster driver, which is very interesting indeed. However, it's a very late phase in this race, and that shouldn't affect the results too much. As we're on board with him, the 21-second gap heading into Sector 2. On board with Barry Clayton as he starts this lap then, is heading through Turn 3 rather. 21 seconds off the lead of this race, but is a few seconds clear of Guy Swarbrick. Guy Swarbrick, a very impressive effort in this race so far. Podium in the AM division, and he's led a very solid race indeed. Has had pace to match the pro runners. On board then with Andrew Rammer once again. Has not had quite as quiet a race as race 1, but has been able to just settle down and will be aiming for a P4. However, Willinglis behind is hunting him down and hunting him down hard. This will be a great recovery for Willinglis if he can make it stick. We are of course on the penultimate lap. We have Alex Smith heading round to start the final lap in just a few seconds time. But while all that is happening, we have Willinglis hunting down Andrew Brammer. Then we have Paul Millman a few seconds down there. A few incidents for him, unfortunately, in this race sees him P6. Likewise for Rob Whitney, P7. Likewise for Jack Hodson, P8. And unfortunately, we lost Alan Matthews a few laps ago. Then starting the final lap with Alex Smith. Meanwhile, Willinglis and Andrew Rammer battling it out. Let's see who comes out on top here. Up the inside, it's going to be made very easy indeed for Willinglis. And his contact very briefly, but it's Willinglis up into P4. What a recovery in this race. His pace certainly has helped him in that he has been so strong here in race 2. What a shame. In fact, he's been so strong all the weekend. What a shame that in the race sessions, he hasn't been able to flex his muscles. He has, just not in the way that he would have wanted, rather. But we're on board with Alex Smith then, as he starts the final lap. In fact, he doesn't start the final lap of this race. He's heading towards the halfway point of the final lap of this race. A 20-second margin is the type of margin that he certainly had the pace to build up throughout the race weekend. It wasn't to be in race 1. He still came out with a race victory. It was just made very difficult. Race 2 as well, things became a little bit more complicated. But owing to potentially some of the issues that his rivals have suffered here in race 2, we see that Alex Smith will be coming home with the race 2 victory in a few corners time. It has been a great boost to his championship charge. I imagine a great boost to his confidence. He has been incredible in terms of pace so far this weekend. Only a couple of corners left to negotiate. A couple of corners that have caught drivers out though. So we'll be watching with bated breath as we see that pink and white liveried Blue Spark car heading round into the final corner. Will he get any oversteer? No, he won't. He just has to get on the allowed pedal, and we had weaves across the line in race 1. We're going to get the same in race 2, because it is Alex Smith who takes the race 2 victory. It's not quite a grand slam, but it's 2 race victories. Congratulations, Alex Smith. Great pace. Thoroughly deserved. It was made difficult, but you made it work in the end. Jack Hodson comes home to take P8. Barry Clayton heading around the final corner in the end. Another driver who has certainly had a difficult weekend, but still takes home good points, will be coming home to come home P2 with good pace on the board. And then retaking the AM race victory as is usual, but rounding out the overall podium, it is Guy Swarbrick with impressive pace, once again thoroughly deserved for Guy Swarbrick there. Willinglis, what a charge to come home P4 in the end. Great pace, qualifying pace really throughout much of that race, sees him come home P4 in the end. Andrew Brammer, again, a little bit of a slightly more messy race, not quite the podium that he would have wanted as he had it in race 1, but comes home P5, points on board for him as well. Paul Millman certainly had plenty of antics here in race 2. He'll be coming home in P6 and gets points on the board for his efforts. Then we watch Rob Whitney negotiate the final couple of corners. He has shone on a few occasions here in race 2. He's demonstrated some strong defending. Unfortunately, it wasn't to be for him. Certainly didn't go his way. A great getaway from the start, leading the race at one point. He comes home in P7 in the end to round out the running here at Albert Park for this weekend. Do we get any victory donuts? We do from Will Inglis. Thank you, Will. For the smoke show there from Andrew Brammer as well, who has gone for the clutch burn, completely demolished the rear tyres strategy, and both their engines now at maximum temperature. Guy Swarbrick attempting some donuts here to celebrate his well-deserved podium, and they're not going quite to plan. going to have to mark you down some points there, unfortunately, for that one guy, as we have the leaders coming in to round out their running as well. So I hope you've enjoyed watching here at Australia as much as I've enjoyed commentating. It has been a roller coaster of a weekend, it must be said, an absolute just cocktail of emotions, really. It was just, it was chaos at some points. It was very enjoyable indeed. But I hope you've enjoyed watching as much as I've enjoyed commentating, and I'll catch you in a fortnight's time for round 7. Thank you very much.